first session of ECS 3711. Welcome to my colleagues, Dr. Dunga and Ms. Ngwenya, which are the lecturers also for this module. I'm Prof. Robinson, the module leader, and today Dr. Dunga is going to lead an overview of lesson 1, chapters 1 and 2 from the textbook. I will also place the slides under additional resources. Those of you that cannot attend, I will also place the recording under announcements. I just have to emphasize, please read the welcome message online on the MyUNISA site, so that you can familiarize yourself of what the module is about. Take note that the discussion forums need to be done. You need to discuss so that you can also report back on assessment 5, which is a portfolio and a proposal. So you have to do all your discussion forums and you also have to do all the assessments. All of them are counting. 60% for the portfolio and proposal and 40% for all the assessments during the semester. Like I say, you have to do the discussion forums because you will have to report back also on them in terms of the portfolio. Let me hand over to Dr. Dunga. She's going to provide an overview of lesson 1, chapters 1 and 2 of the textbook. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. And good afternoon. Yeah, it's past 12 now. Yeah, so it's good afternoon to everyone. As Prof has said, my name is Dr. Dunga, and thank you very much, Prof, for giving me this opportunity to take the students through this. As she has indicated, I'm not going to teach like to dig deep into the lesson, but rather just to give you an overview of what you should expect, and thereafter you are supposed to go and read the book. Okay, so as she has indicated that familiarize yourself with the tutorial later. There's a lot of information there that you have to take note of, and then then yeah. So today we are going to look at chapter 1 and 2 lesson. That is lesson 1, which is chapter 1 and 2, as indicated in the TL. So in this in this module, this is ECS 3711. I hope you've gone through the tutorial later, so for you to just get acquainted with what is to be expected, especially about the prescribed book, because the prescribed book that we have is the one that is being shown on the screen. That is on research methods for economics. Edited by Mishi and Mareza, and this book can be found it's from Van Skyke. So if you'd want, you can buy an online copy from their webpage. But as well as if you want a hard copy, I guess you can also order one online that can be delivered to you, or you can go to their shops, the Van Skyke itself, and get a copy for yourself. It is very important that you get the copy. In as much as we said we are going to share the slides, but the slides are not explaining in detail. It's just a guide as to what you should expect. But the book is well articulated, is well explained, which I guess you should be able to get more information from there. So that's all about the prescribed book. And as indicated, this is our outline for the book. So I'm just going to give you a nutshell of what you should expect. So in the chapter 1 that we're discussing today, in chapter 2, the chapter 1 will look at the understanding of research as decoded into business and economic sciences. This book is mainly dealing with economic students, which gives you actually a very good perspective of what you should expect as researchers from the economics perspective. And then in the chapter 2, we're going to look at the research types, design, and the methodology. And further to this, you're going to look at chapter 3, that is the ethics in research. And then in chapter 4 is the art of writing in economics research. And then the part 2 of the book will look at the research methods, That is in chapter 5, we look at the understanding quantitative research techniques. Chapter 6, cross-sectional data analysis. Chapter 7, time series method. Chapter 8, qualitative research methods. Chapter 9 is a mixed methods research. I'm not going to dig deep into it. I guess by the time we proceed in this module, you get to an understanding of what we mean when you talk of qualitative and for now, it seems like jargons that are just difficult for you to understand. But as you dig or you learn more or you cover the chapter or the section, you should be able to understand. And then in part 3, that now we're dealing with the academic writing, that now you have acquired the knowledge of what is expected from the methodology part and the introduction part. You come with all that, and then you should be able to come up with a proposal further for your master's and your PhD to come up with your thesis. So take this as the basics, and all this that you're going to get from this book or from this module, you should be able to apply it even if you do your master's, if you do your PhD. It's the same basics that you have to, it's the same approaches that you have to refer to. And then so chapter 10 will look at the writing a research proposal, and then chapter 11, harvesting papers from dissertations and so on. This is just now how can you make use of the papers that you gather from different areas, whether it's online or it's articles or whatever. How do you get that information and apply it in your in whatever you're writing, whether it's a proposal or it's your thesis, it's your dissertation, mini, master's, and a PhD, and so on. So now, just looking at chapter 1, as I've indicated, say chapter 1 looks at the understanding of research as decoded into business and economic science. So just to look at the learning outcomes of what you gain from this chapter. So first of all, the chapter explains the concept of scientific research, and then it also explains the characteristics and the purpose of scientific research, which we as economists, that's what we actually deal more with. And as well as it will explain or differentiate between the different philosophies that are there underpinning research, but also define research and common research methods that are applied in business and economic sciences, to say what are some of the methods that you'd use as you are doing your research, because there are different types, different methods that are there, but which ones, it depends which one you'd have to choose. You cannot select all of them. Sometimes you have to mix maybe 1 or 2 methods, but in the end there has to be a selection of which one. In that you have to actually specify to say this is the method that I'm going to use from the onset, right? And then it also explained to you how you apply different philosophies to research reasoning in business and economic sciences, as well as you'll be able to identify the key elements and or steps in the research process and how they are guided by underlying philosophies, underlying meaning the ones that are already existing, right? And then as well as understand the barriers to research communication, understand the approaches to research communication, and then know the application of research in business and economic sciences. So as with you students, I always say that you are like, you've just been added to the family. So this is already a growing family. When you talk of research, it's a growing family where there's your firstborn. The firstborn already did so much, you know, laid all the background. So you learn from you learn and you'll be able to learn from the first one, because the first one is the first one that learned how to wash dishes, make the bed, and so on and so forth. So you learn so many things from the first one. And when you are now doing the things, you don't say that I'm the one who did this, I'm the one who did this, because remember, you learned from someone else. That is your firstborn. So you need, each time as you're writing, you need to sign to say that this I learned from the firstborn. I'm just maybe the 4th or the 6th or the last born, but all this I learned from the firstborn. So I'd always tell the students to say, at this level, we're not expecting you to come up with something new or invent something. You could be very smart that you invent something, but that's not the expectation, because we know that they're already people that were like born before you that have done so much. So i.e., how do you uncover or discover to say that all these things that I'm struggling with, they already exist. Someone already did this. All I just have to do. How do you get that? I tell my students to say, you have to read. You have to read, because everything is hidden in the books. So if you read, you gain more knowledge, you understand to say the things that I've been struggling with. Imagine there's already someone who already, like, you know, said it all. It's written, it's there. All I just have to do is read and be able to see how I can apply it in what I'm doing now, because there's always evolution where things are changing, there's movements and everything. So there's new technologies that are coming and everything, but you don't just apply, just use what is being done now, because sometimes you have to apply what has been done in the past, try to link it with what's being happening now, and be able to come up with a writing. So sorry there, I just dissected a little bit, but yes. So that is from the learning outcome, that is from chapter 1. In our chapter 2, we will now further look at the types of research. So we've done the first part, now we're looking more on the methodology part. So in this one, in the chapter 2, now we'll look at various types of research and when to use them. And then it also explains the research designs and the characteristics of a good research design. And then you will also be able to explain the phases and elements of research design, discuss the importance of research design. You distinguish between research design, the methods and the methodologies, explain various quantitative, qualitative, and the mixed research methods. I think for you to understand this is after we have discussed what we mean when you talk of quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method. But just keep that thought in your mind to say this is some of the things that we'll uncover in the following chapters in the module. And then also identify the best research methods for scientific research. Okay, so as I said, I'm not really going to teach, but I think I just wanted to give you in a nutshell of what we mean when you talk of research. So when you talk of research, first of all, the questions that you have to ask yourself is, what do I want to research? Why do I want to research, and how do I want to research it? Maybe before I explain this, maybe let me just explain to you in a nutshell what we mean when we talk of research. Research is quite broad. Definitions may differ depending on the discipline where you're coming from, but from the economic perspective, we look at research as a process of gaining knowledge by conducting inquiries about a phenomenon of interest. For instance, I'll give an example to say, when we as researchers, we don't really dwell on hearsays, right? We don't just, because in the end, you have to come up with a write-up, right? That you get published, or you present it to a conference. So you don't come up with hearsays. If someone is to ask you, okay, so how do you base your findings? You say, because I heard from so-and-so, I heard this from so-and-so. No, most of the times we want it to be facts. So how do you get those facts? For instance, we've had, if I'll just give an example, we've gone through the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. After the pandemic, or during the pandemic, there's so much that was being said. You know, some would hear newspaper reports. Would hear reports from the TV, from the news, and so on. Sometimes some of those reports would be reported from reporters who'd maybe gone to a place and then interviewed 1 or 2 people, and then from there they'll make a general analysis to say this is what is happening. So sometimes the reports were being underreported. For instance, if they would talk of COVID cases of deaths, for instance, you'd find that not everything that happened that time was reported as according to the way it happened. It's either underreported or overreported. So with you as a researcher, then you sit down and say, okay, now we want to have a clear picture of like facts of exactly that what happened. So what do you do? So I think with the rest, you understand it better as you go along with the module. But for instance, with the economists, right? You'd have like what we call primary data. You've got secondary data. What we mean of primary data is data that you have to go and collect from respondents, from the people themselves. For instance, in South Africa, we want to look at the COVID-19 pandemic to say, let's look at the pandemic, how it has affected, because there's so much that everything right now is being referred to the pandemic. There's unemployment in South Africa is being referred to the pandemic, to say the pandemic is what is causing unemployment. There's so much, but you as a researcher say, I want to go and deep dig into it to say, how is unemployment been affected by COVID-19 pandemic? Because remember, before the pandemic, there was still unemployment. So we can't just say that 100% unemployment is rising because of pandemic. It could be that there is a certain percentage whereby the pandemic has actually attributed or contributed towards unemployment in South Africa. So that percentage is what we want to find out. The fact, how much to the dot to say, This is at least estimates that are closer to the to reality, that we as economists or as a researcher, that's what you want to find out. So what do? You go and collect the data. So for instance, with unemployment, you want to look at unemployment in South Africa. So if you look at unemployment in South Africa, that's quite huge data. Sometimes because of monetary things, you may not have be able to do that. So there's already existing data, which we call the secondary data, which you'd find from sources that are already available. For instance, what we call Stats SA data. So you'd go there and say, okay, now I just want to look at unemployment in South Africa. So with Stats SA, you find that unemployment is being recorded at a quarterly, month, a yearly, and so on. And as well as there is data, what we call the household data. So you get that data where you'd have information of like, for instance, with you just want to look at a certain topic, that is unemployment. So, okay, what you gather from there, you look at, okay, there's so many variables that would affect unemployment. What are they? First of all, we look at the age to say, how can age affect unemployment? How can the age of households? So, for instance, this data has been collected from the household perspective. So how is the age being affected? How is that age affecting unemployment? How is the pandemic itself affected in unemployment? How is gender? How is the education level? So you'd come up with all figures from there to say, okay, from the analysis that I've gathered of this, the results reveal that unemployment for the past 1 year, or from the time that this data was collected, let's say this data is the 2023 data, which is now, or 2022 rather, which is post-pandemic, right? The results that we see is that gender contributes to unemployment. We see that it's more of the male-headed households that are employed as compared to the female-headed households. Let's look at the age. We see that, oh, okay, the results show that it's only those that are like from the different, a certain threshold of age. For instance, for those that are 35 and above are the ones that are employed. But we see that the youthful age, they are not employed. So then you now as a researcher, you should be able to come up with interpretation to say that, could it be that there's a mismatch that, sorry, let me not go there first. Could it be that the companies are not, they're not keen on employing the youthful generation because now maybe it could be that they are not, they don't have expertise, or they haven't really like gotten them, what do you call this, the experience itself. That's why. So you are now coming up with your voice that this could be the reason. You put that on the side, and then another one, you find that those that are employed are only those education level. So you find that those that are employed are only the ones that have got maybe education from, maybe they've got a university degree. Then you can come up now with your voice as a researcher. You say that it could be that now there's a mismatch between the industry and what the skills that people have. For instance, now that you find that most of the headed households only have maybe matric, and that's not what the industry wants. So industry wants maybe people that have got higher education, like the degree, and of a specific, because of changes in technology, they've got a specific a requirement, you see. So there is a mismatch. So can you see now we have gathered that education level, gender, and the age, they're all contributing to unemployment. And then and you come up with how do you come up with now the pandemic? Then you can compare to say, okay, this is data from 2022, that is the post-pandemic. Then let's look at the data from before the pandemic of 2019. Then you come up with the results for 2019, and then you compare. Then after your comparison, then that's when you can come up with the results to say, okay, based on this, we can say that, okay, the pandemic has contributed, say, this percentage because of the results that we have found between these two data sets. So then you can say, okay, the pandemic contributes so much, the education level contributes so much. And then thereafter, we as economists, because we want to now come up with recommendations, because these recommendations is what we give to the policymakers to say that, okay, the government, as you're coming up with the policies, look at into these things, make sure that the youth are educated. They shouldn't just get the matric. After matric, they must also be able to go into university, and the percentages, they should be more. What can you do now? So government will find initiatives of how to encourage the youth to be able to get a higher education. And as well as when you're coming up with in these universities, make sure that the courses that they have should align with what the industry is requesting. And then there's this issue of experience. What can you do? Maybe the policymakers should be able to engage with the industry to say, you know what, there should be ways or trainings for this younger generation to say once they are out of the university, they should have some training so that they should acquire their experience that is required out there. So can you see now, as a researcher, you have been able to contribute towards the development of the country. How have you done that? Because you went through research, you've come up with the results that are facts, and you've come up with the recommendations that can be used by the policymaker. So in a nutshell, even though I've been lengthy in explaining this, but that is what you mean when you talk of research. So I hope they were together. So now when we come to research, as you can see here, it says there's different types of research. We've got the scientific and the non-scientific. With the scientific, we look at it entails a systematic process of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data to understand a phenomenon. And on the other hand, with non-scientific, it does not apply the scientific method. So we, as the economists, we are dealing more on the scientific part. So as a researcher, before you come up with your topic and whatever you want, your contribution, because in the end, whatever you are writing has to have an effect, has to have an impact, right? Because we are all looking towards the development of our country, right? So it has to have an impact, whether it's a small impact, but at least come up with something that would have an impact to change people's livelihoods and so on and so forth. That's what the government is expecting from us as economists. So the first thing that you have to ask yourself is that, why the research questions that you ask yourself as you come up with your topic is that, what am I researching on? Why am I researching on this? What is the importance of doing this? And how am I going to do them? If you're able to answer these three questions and it's making sense, then you know that, okay, this research is worth your while. Otherwise, if it's not, then you may not even have to go ahead with it. So to understand a phenomenon under study, scientific research has got different processes, or it follows different systematic processes. So which, just in a nutshell, it involves the identification of a research problem, defining a research problem, gathering prior or existing knowledge on the subject, designing the methodology. So this is all that we're going to be repeating over and over and over as we go along with our module, right? So now you look at the book. In the book, you look at the research process, what we mean about research process, and so on. So I think now I've gone past my time, but yeah, the other thing that I just wanted to make note of is that one of when you I think there's a discussion forum that has been, I think it will be shared with you on what we call, there are two, I think, let me just let's see if I have it here. Okay, here on research philosophy. So I think I will share with you on the discussion forum of what was discussed about research philosophy. We want you to take the actual definition of what we mean when we talk of research philosophy, which is the research philosophies and the paradigms that exist in terms of when you're doing your research. So these are the foundational concepts in the field of research methodology, providing the framework or the guide that the approach to conducting research and how to interpret the results. So while they are related, they represent different aspects of the research. So first of all, we've got what we call the research philosophies, that are there actually three of them. There's the interpretism, pragmatism, and the positivism. Excuse me. So all this, I won't go detail into it. We'll share you the explanation, and also the book has the proper explanation. But all this in a nutshell will now guide you to the research methods, or the approaches, or the paradigms, which are the qualitative, the mixed method, and the quantitative, as you are doing your analysis. So first of all, when you come up with your research topic and everything, whilst you haven't yet dealt dig into your topic, you have to think through to say, what research method or methodology or approach am I going to use? Is it the qualitative part? Is it the mixed method? Is it the quantitative? With the quantitative, which is most of us, the economists, we dealing with numbers. We want facts, figures, and then we take those figures, we dissect them, and then we analyze them using their tools that we use, and then we analyze it and come up with figures that we will be able to present percentages, like I did in the explanation of COVID or in unemployment. You come up with figures to say such a percentage, there's 50% of the population in South Africa and 39, I think, unemployment level, or people that are poor, poverty levels. So they are actually there are measures that you'd use. For instance, when you want to calculate unemployment, poverty, I think you've done that in your other modules. So you use that plus your analysis and everything, you embed everything into it, and then you come up with a percentage that would give you the results, the interpretation of your results. And then on the qualitative part, that is I think Prof will actually dig deep into this, where you're now looking at it's more to do with the subjective or the opinion on someone, whilst with a quantitative, I think we're looking more on the objective part. So with the subjective, you now want to dig deep into one problem to say there are a lot of rape cases that are out there. So you want to dig into it to say, how is this done? And so on. So you get someone and you sit down with that person and it would give you the information, like would explain what we call, even if the questionnaire, they're like open-ended, where you give that person the whole time to explain pages and pages and pages of what is happening in terms of rape cases, right? With mixed methods, mixing both the quantity part and the quality part. So there are other approaches or other disciplines that actually deal with this, where they're mixing the quantitative part and the qualitative part in what they call the mixed method. So I just wanted to make you note of that. And then as well as when you are writing, we I think propose for you to use the Harvard style of referencing. I don't know if you already know, but I think as we go along, we'll be able to explain to you what we mean when we talk of referencing. But I think I dwelled on that just in a nutshell, whereby, as I said, you are now not the firstborn, you are maybe the lastborn in the family. So when you are writing, you go to the firstborn and then you see how the firstborn did the thing. Oh, this is how they do the bed. This is how and then you run to your work and then you write, this is how we do the bed. This is how I do this. And then putting that as it's your own words. Remember that you learned this from someone else. You got this information from someone else. You have to cite to say this information, according to Dunga 2020 paper, this is what she said about unemployment. This is what she found about unemployment in South Africa, right? Because if you don't do this, this is what we call plagiarism. And as I said, you are like the last born now. There's so much that has been said out there. So you have to take note of this. And now you're only at, I think it's honors level. But remember, in years to come, you'll not be where you are. You will be professors, you'll be what, and so on. And then people now will start reading you. And while reading you, they'll start digging deep about you to say, let's dig deep and see what this person is. And then they'll come to your dissertation, which you did at your honors level, and find this, that there was a paragraph that you had put in your dissertation, which was you didn't cite. That is disaster for you, because all that you have can actually come to a crash because of this. They'll revoke your PhD and so on because of that simple mistake that you did when you're at your honors level. So you have to be very careful. And this is going to be something that you have to learn as you start now, to say that each time you have to cite. And remember, when we talk of citing, you don't just take that paragraph it's a paper that I did maybe in 2020 or whatever, and then you put it exactly. And then you just say, according to Dunga, this, exactly the words that I said. No, you need to paraphrase. You need to paraphrase, put it in your own words, right? Put it in your own words. Don't just copy paste everything. If you start with that trend now, it's going to be easy for you as you go along, because remember, it's writing and writing and writing your entire life. So you need to develop this trend whereby you should learn this culture. If you learn now, it won't be difficult for you as you progress in your career, right? So you have to take note of that, whereby you have to cite as you write. And then this one, we use the Harvard method of referencing. that is found, I think, in your welcome message. Am I right, Prof? I think so. You should get that. If not, I
Yes.
think the library, yes. If not, I think the library also should be able to assist you on that. And then the other part is that one of when you are writing, we'd say this is the book that we have. This is the book that you're supposed to use. So, for instance, you'll be given an assignment to write about a certain topic. I'm just giving an example, and then you just say, "Oh, your citation in the book, according to the book, according to the book, according to the book." Remember, so at some point you have to write literature review. So this is just a guide that we have given you, right? But you can also use other sources. You can use, how do you use the other sources? Use other sources that are talking of the similar thing that you are in this book. So you'd have other sources to say, okay, in this book, they're also talking about research design. Let me read, what are they saying about research design in this book? Okay, there's also another book. There's an article that was what was published. What did they say? So in that way, you are gathering information, right? So in a way, if I get your assignment, how do I know that this student is well read? Is through your references. Because if you have 5 or 6 or 10, then I know that you've covered 10 different types of sources. But I'm not talking of different sources that are talking of something different from what you are writing. It's all, you know, in channel or in similar to what you're writing. They're just adding on the voice to, you know, what you are writing. So as I said, you are the last born. Remember, there's a first, second, third. For instance, you are the 7th. So you will have to get information from the first, second, third. It's still the same information that has been written in different ways. Another way is that it's the same information, but now covering different parts of the world. It's from the American perspective. It's, for instance, it's an employment paper that you're writing. You write about unemployment in the US. What do they say? How is unemployment in the US? You go to Mexico. What is unemployment in Mexico? Or from the continents, different continents, to say in Africa, we are all dealing with this thing. You find that you find similar problems in Africa. Let's look at now the developed countries. Where are they in terms of unemployment? What have they done to reach to that level? So you can see that you've got so much to write. As economists as well, we've got theories that are also backing our what has been written, to say what are the theories. So these theories are now from our grandfathers that were there long time ago in the 18s, whatever, you know, writing about the same thing. You can see that. So you have so much to write, so much to reference from. So take note of that, that as you're writing, you need to reference, and your references are not just from the book itself. You can have different sources, but all talking of the same idea or thought that you have. I think from there, I think I may need to stop there. I don't know if there's anything else, Prof, you wanted me to add, but I think for today I'll stop there. And as you can see, the slides are a lot. They're about, if you combine chapter 1 and chapter 2, they're about 70 slides, I think. So you need to go and just go revise on that. But the book is what you need to have, and then read the book, and the slides are just there to guide you. But the book has all the information, plus any other books that you may want to also read from that are talking of the same thing. So I think, Prof, there, I don't know if I'm still within time or I'm out of time.
Yes. No, thank you, Dr. Dunga.
Yes.
Thank you so much. To just make it clear, you just provided an overview, and thank you so much for the relevant examples. I'm sure students are going to gain knowledge from that. We are not going to go into qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods research now. I will do all of those in between. Dr. Dunga will do lesson 2, and I will do the in-between lessons, and then you'll see her again with lesson 6. So thank you so much, colleagues and students, for being here. I'm going to stop the recording. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.